Greeting everyone. Today we will learn about the importance of vaccine in elderly population. As we get older, our immune system weakens and then it can be more difficult for the immune system to fight for the infectious diseases. We will start by seeing the population trends across the globe. Human world is struggling with population, aging, migration and urbanization. The most prominent changes are rapid population growth in developing economies and population aging is happening throughout the world. 99% of projected growth over the next 4 decades will occur in countries that are classified as less developed. And here you can see that Africa and Asia by 2050 will give the larger population as compared to developed countries. But with the second graph or image, you can see that we now have fewer kids as compared to last century, and the fertility rates vary widely across regions from 1.6 in Europe to 4.6 in Africa. Roughly half the world's population lives in a country with fertility rates below the long-term replacement rate of approximately 2.1 children a woman. So there are some changing in the population demographic. Perhaps the most important of the global demographic development is the changing in population age structure. So three highly predictable sets of changes that stands out are: number 1, falling youth dependency; number 2, shifting number of young adults; and number 3, rising proportion of older people. These pyramid graphs are showing the number of older people that will increase in upcoming 10 years, and it will be 10 times more than now, and it can showing the peak ages in 1980, 2015 and 2050. So why it is very important for us that if we have more elder population, what is happening around? So as we get older, we become more prone to catching infections, and once we catch an infection, we can take longer to recover. Some infectious diseases such as pneumonia and flu can make us much sicker than they used to when we were young, and can even lead to life-threatening complications. This graph is showing the number of increased pertussis cases from 2000 to 2012, and there is increase and decrease in number of pertussis cases over a period of time. Along with that, pneumonia, which can also lead to severe health complications, and here this cartoon is showing the various pathogens that can cause pneumonia in elderly population. So moving forward, these graphs are showing the zoster cases and case fertility rate among elderly by group B streptococcus infection. The purpose of showing all these epidemiological data of various infectious diseases among elderly population is that these all infectious diseases which are suffering by the elderly population can be preventable. And moving forward, these are the hospital expenditures, and for the elderly people which have increased substantially over the time, and the health expenditure for older people have grown faster than the rest of the population. As we have seen in previous slides that mostly elderly people are getting the infectious diseases which can be preventable. So how we can prevent this? The answer is in the next slide. And it is pretty clear that thanks to vaccination, we can prevent infectious diseases. Along with that, vaccination has highest impact on health more than other medical interventions. And you can see, and it is that you can prevent 97% of the infectious diseases with the vaccination. So, moving forward, we have to change the taboo that the vaccines are only for the children. And you can see that vaccines are not only for the children. We have the vaccines for adults, we have the vaccines for pregnant women, and also for the elderly population. So, keeping pace forward, we know that age associated increased susceptibility to infectious diseases would suggest that vaccination should be a route to promote healthy aging and keep our senior autonomous and independent, as vaccination represent a cost effective and efficient strategy at community level. However, it is possible that at a similar age, some individuals, including the elderly, might still be good responders, while some others, even younger, would definitely fail to mount a protective response. So, it is very important to identify the ideal vaccine candidate for over the age of 50 years. Here, this slide is summarizing the candidate vaccines for individuals age 50 years or adults according to their way of living. We can see here the pneumococcal polysaccharide vaccine, acellular pertussis vaccine, pneumococcal conjugate vaccine, and trivalent influenza vaccine. For each vaccine, the main preventive goal is prevention of mortality or improvement of quality of life for the elderly population. Now we will talk about the CDC recommendation for elderly population immunization schedule of 2018 by age, and the next graph and the next slide cartoon image will show the immunization schedule of 2018 of adults by health condition. This is here for you to just have a look to see that people around you, you yourself, and your loved ones are vaccinated or not according to official recommendation by health authorities. Let's talk more about the infectious diseases among elderly. So, if we will talk about influenza, influenza is one of the leading cause of morbidities among elderly population. And this graph is depicting the number of cases and the vaccination coverage in 22 European countries for people who aged at least 65 years. And you can see clearly that there is a low coverage of seasonal influenza vaccine among elderly population. This data is showing that only few countries are meeting the WHO criteria of vaccination coverage of 75%. And so now the question arises, what could be the reason of low coverage of vaccines among elderly? There are obviously some contributing factors for low vaccination coverage among elderly. So let's see what are these. Some of these factors mentioned here, like lack of awareness about the vaccines. And so if we will see that the awareness is not only limited for the elderly population, some of the healthcare professionals will also not known by the vaccination and their coverage. So if we will, for example, if they will not know and have the awareness, and then of course they will not recommend it for their clients. Similarly, there can be an issue of reimbursement from health insurance. There can also be an issue of lack of systematic assessment of vaccination status, as it can be difficult sometimes for the elderly population having a lot of comorbidities and Alzheimer issues to keep record for their vaccination. So, if we will move forward, this slide is about the scientific explanation of immune aging in elderly population. So, as you can see, that only lack of awareness cannot be an issue among elderly. There are other issues like, as I talked before, comorbidities. So, if they have comorbidities, it is logical that they are having pharmacological treatments which can generate stress. Moreover, their diet and physical activities are for sure can't be similar as adults. Along with that, their immune responses also reduced with their age. So, the question arises how we can deal with this to have a better coverage of vaccines among elderly, and what should be the future steps we should take to make it possible that things will go more towards betterment of health of elderly. Here are some proposals which we can look for the achievement of our goals. For example, it is very important to educate healthcare professionals. There should be a convenient vaccine schedule for elderly population, and also there should be some novel approaches for making efficacious vaccines by keeping in mind the immunosenescence among elderly population. The important point is how to educate healthcare professionals. Healthcare professionals should have the knowledge of vaccines. They should know how to address the questions arising about safety and efficacy of vaccines. And there should be understanding among healthcare professionals to evaluate the media report among vaccine communication. They should have immunological concepts and having a proactive mind to overcome vaccine hesitancy can play an important role for minimizing vaccine related public health concerns. So, how we can conclude this now that elderly populations are more prone to infectious diseases, and vaccination can prevent infectious diseases among elderly. If we will get success of vaccination coverage as recommended by WHO, that is 75% among elderly, we can not only prevent hospitalization, but it can also directly cut the health cost expenditures in elderly population. For allowing elderly population to achieve healthy aging and better quality of life, we should also focus to overcome the immunosenescence. Healthcare professionals should be educated and have knowledge about safety and efficacy of vaccines, not only for high vaccine coverage, also for effective communication and awareness of public. Thank you so much.